bjpen.com. Now, I gotta tell you guys, they're one of my favorite sites. Not just to get my news. I work with them. Maybe I'll send them some information. I'll ask them, hey, could you put this out and get it? They're just great. I just really like bjpen.com. And I want to preface it like that in case somewhere I get misunderstood here and you think I'm giving them a hard time. They're just the focal point because they had done a story. They did a story on comments that I made. And at least in my own view, right? And the author of a statement is always going to be sensitive. That's not what I meant. And everyone else goes, it doesn't matter. But you feel like it does because they were your words. And I get that there's some of that here. But as the author of the statement, talking about Rakhmonov called out Kelvin Gastelum. And when I reread the way that BJ Penn had that, and I think maybe even they captured about what a hard time Chael gave Rakhmonov for the world's worst call out. It's actually a really good call out. And I think that I was misunderstood. And I'll tell you why. I gave Rakhmonov a hard time. He had done this on social media through Twitter of putting a question mark. He called out Kelvin Gastelum, or at least meant to, came the closest that he, a guy that's 16-0, and Rogan says could be fighting for a world championship, he's the closest that he's ever done to calling somebody out, except he didn't call him out. He put a question mark. So now he asked him to fight, right? Asking somebody to fight is very different than calling them out. One can be done in a nice manner. What do you think? Here's my thoughts, but now I'd like to hear yours. That's the question mark. What do you think? If I'm calling somebody out, I already got it figured out. I don't need to know what you think. I already did all the thinking for us, and here's where we're at, right? It's just different. And I was bringing that point up. But as I reread it on bjpen.com, I start thinking, well, you know what? Hold on, because this is two different things. I have a hard time to the way he went about it, but now let's look at what his intent that he was going after was, which is a match with Kelvin Gastelum. I don't think there's a smarter match for Rakhmonov to go for. And I think that there's a lot of allure to that for Kelvin as well. Let's take a look at this, guys. You always hear me tell you that rankings don't matter. And they don't to some of the things that I hear ran with in the industry. Rankings don't matter as a way for you to get out of doing a match. Talking about, well, you're ranked and this guy's ranked, and therefore you shouldn't compete with them. They don't matter in that regard. Sure, they have a significance. And by example, Rakhmonov is ranked number 6. Take a look in that same division, a guy ranked number 8 is who Jeff Neal is who it is who Rakhmonov not only just fought, he just beat. So you kind of start to see, he got to be here if a guy that you stopped is here. Looks like maybe we got these rankings right, and, you're undefeated and definitely hit more home runs than anyone else here, but for whatever reason, we just can't move you up until you beat those guys, and it's going to be hard for you to title shot regardless of what Joe Rogan says. The world is, if you want a world title fight, you're going to need the world's biggest voice, me, to know if Rakhmonov is your first name, your last name, or if it's a nickname, and they just think it's cute to call you that. You have to let that be known. And when you do things on the internet, they're supposed to be call-outs, and you do it in a question mark form, it's a problem. And I brought that to your attention. Because if this gentleman does his next 16 the way he did his first 16, he will be the biggest draw, and he will be the highest paid, and he will be the most successful UFC fighter to ever live, and that is not an exaggeration. If his next 16 end and finish the way his first 16 have, he will be the biggest star that this sport and the highest paid that this sport has ever had. That's real. But for right now, here's where we're at. Now, why does Kelvin work? Well, Kelvin's not ranked at all. Rakhmonov's ranked number 6. Kelvin's not ranked at all. Kelvin's last fight, he revealed to us after he won that he was so grateful because he knew that could be his last fight had he not won. Rakhmonov's last fight had the most famous podcaster in the world declare should make him the number 1 contender. And we're in very different spots, but the guy with the whip hand is going after the other guy. You got to take advantage of that. That doesn't happen very often. So when a guy does that, even if he's made a mistake or doesn't understand it doesn't matter why it happened. If somebody above you is willing to pull you up, you gotta give a really good look to that. And I believe Kelvin can beat him. I don't love, and I've been open about this, 170 pounds for Kelvin. I just know the energy that it takes. And I know the energy that Kelvin has, I like when he spins and uses that energy on a heavy bag, on a jump rope, the sparring atmosphere, in a jiu-jitsu class. That's what I like. But to go to 170, it takes some of that energy and you got to put it over to weight management. Small deal. But a point that I would bring up, because I think Kelvin can beat him. I would pick Kelvin to beat him. I just believe that if Kelvin accepts that fight publicly, Kelvin should do a very good job of explaining a victory for him, for Kelvin, is to just do something that no other man has done. And everybody's going to think that means beat Rakhmonov, who's 16-0. And Kelvin needs to talk about that. I can outperform all these guys. I'm better than all those guys. I'm going to prove I'm better than them. I'm going to do something that all those guys have never done. Before he actually makes the reveal, build it up first, and then tell people, I'm going to go the distance with this guy. Start with that. Now again, I think Kelvin can beat him. I'm sharing something different with you. Could you imagine a scenario where Kelvin cuts his weight? He tells us that he didn't know what was going to happen to him after this last fight. He didn't get a win. He gets a win. He gets fight of the night. Everything's wonderful for Kelvin, right? Then he gets called out by this number 6 guy in the world at a brand new weight class. Like, that's going to be a main card feature about everything's going Kelvin's way. Could you imagine he goes out, he does this fight, that he gets a fight and takes a fight that nobody else is willing to do, which is why Rakhmonov is sitting there without a partner. And he goes out and he finishes the fight. And we got to go to the judge's decision. And it doesn't go his way. Could you imagine that? And then we find out that he gets cut. Whoa, he just did something that nobody else could do. He just did something that nobody else has done. But it has to be recognized. Sometimes you got to bring that attention. Sometimes you have to bring that forward. I've seen this in business many times. Two guys get pulled in. You both have failed. You've both done a bad job, but I'm keeping one of you. I got to let one of you go, but you've both failed. What do I do when I have 2 failures? And it's a pretty big deal. Yeah, I failed. I missed my mark by $1. That dude dropped the company $9 million. These aren't even close to the same fail. I failed less than he did, right? But these start to become arguments, but only if you bring them forward, only if you have them get attention. Look, if Kelvin wants to go down to that weight class and he wants to go and take on Rakhmonov, that's a wonderful thing. I believe Kelvin will beat him. But a victory, aside from having his hand raised, is to go the distance. I'm just bringing it to your attention. Nobody else has done that. I'm just bringing that to your attention. If you're getting ready to bite off something that is going to seem too, I just think we could break it down a little bit. Can you finish the round? Are you sure you can finish it? Okay, good, because I'm sure you can finish it too. I'm going to ask you that same question in 5 minutes before the next round. And I'm going to do that again. I mean, do you understand the game? It's a lot simpler one. And I think that Kelvin, and I think anybody else that gets asked about Rakhmonov is going to be a little bit apprehensive unless they understand there's something else happening here. And the viewer is going to be looking for it. I think it changes some of the apprehension or some of the pressures that go into a matchup. And maybe I'm running it back a little bit. I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm being sincere, but I'll admit I made the video a couple weeks ago. Maybe my memory is slipping just a little bit, but I didn't not like the call out. As a matter of fact, I don't think there was a better match that Rakhmonov could have gone for. Because don't forget one thing in calling out a match, it has to be one that you can get. Right? If Rakhmonov used that time to call out George St. Pierre, do you see how it's what a stupid thing to do? What a waste of time. You can't get that. I like the call out. I even like the match. I was given a hard time to the question mark.